As I sit here, with the years behind me, I often reflect on how much life changes as we get older. When I was younger, I never imagined that one day I'd be sitting in a chair talking about the challenges of aging. But here I am, and I have learned a thing or two along the way. Now, I know that with age comes not only wisdom, but also a whole new set of experiences, some of them not so pleasant, especially when it comes to relationships. Aging is something we can't avoid, no matter how much we try. It's a journey we all must take, and along the way, we sometimes notice that the dynamics with those around us begin to shift. It's like waking up one day and realizing that the world doesn't see you the same way anymore. People start treating you differently, and not always in the way you'd expect. They might become distant, or you might start to feel like you're not as relevant as you once were. And for some, that's hard to swallow. I remember feeling like I had so much to offer, yet it seemed like the more I tried to connect, the more others pulled away. It's a strange thing to experience, especially when you've lived a full life and have so much to share. But here's the truth. People don't always understand what we're going through in our later years. They don't see the small struggles, the little aches, the moments of loneliness, or the fears we face. And sometimes, because of that, they start to pull away or behave in ways we can't quite understand. That's what I want to talk about today. The 9 reasons why people secretly begin to dislike you in old age, and what you can do to change that. Trust me, I've been there, and I'm here to help you navigate it. When I look back on my younger years, I can't help but laugh at how independent I was. I could handle everything: work, family, errands, even heavy lifting without a second thought. I was the one others leaned on, and I took great pride in being able to help. But as the years passed and my body began to slow down, I noticed a shift. One day, my daughter suggested I let her take care of something for me, and I snapped at her. I can do it myself. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate her concern, but I wasn't ready to admit that I needed help. I still saw myself as that strong, capable man, the one who could manage anything. But the reality hit harder than I expected. As I continued to age, my health began to decline in ways I hadn't anticipated. My knees ached, my back stiffened, and even simple tasks like walking or bending became more difficult. Yet, even then, I resisted asking for help. I could see it in my family's eyes. They were concerned, but I could tell they didn't know how to approach me. They didn't want to overstep, but they also didn't want to see me struggle. At first, I thought they were just being kind, but the truth was, they felt burdened. They didn't know how to help without making me feel less than I was. And that's when I realized something important. As we get older, we begin to rely on others more, and sometimes that can feel like too much for them. It's not that we want to be a burden, it's just that we don't always know how to ask for the help we need. But being aware of this can make a big difference. It's about balance. Yes, ask for help when you need it, but try not to let it define your relationship with others. Everyone has their limits, even those who love us the most. As I've grown older, I've realized that my way of doing things has become second nature to me, and that's not always easy for others to understand. Back in the day, I had a routine, one that worked perfectly fine for me. But when my children or younger friends would suggest new ways to do things, like using a smartphone or adjusting my schedule, I'd brush it off. Why fix something that isn't broken? I'd say. I thought my way was the best way, the only way, because it was what I knew and had always done. Little did I realize that my rigidity was starting to put distance between me and the people around me. One incident stands out to me. My grandson, who's always been on top of technology, asked me if I wanted to try a video call with him. I didn't even know how to begin. When I hesitated and told him I'd rather just talk on the phone, he didn't push it, but I saw the disappointment in his eyes. He was trying to connect with me in a way that made sense to him, but I was too stuck in my old ways to see it. That's when it hit me. Being set in our ways as we age isn't just about comfort, it's also about shutting others out. What we consider tried and true methods might seem outdated or inflexible to younger people, and this can cause frustration. It can make them feel like we're not willing to change, not open to new experiences, or worse, that we're refusing to connect with the present. I had to learn to embrace change, even in small doses. Trying new things, not just for the sake of being trendy, but to keep the relationships in my life fresh, has made all the difference. It's not about abandoning who we are, but rather finding a way to meet the world halfway. As I look back on the years, I can't deny that aging brings its fair share of physical discomforts. The aches and pains that I used to push aside now seem to be constant companions. I'm sure many of you can relate, but here's the thing. As we get older, it's easy to start complaining. Sometimes it feels like all I want to do is talk about how sore my knees are, or how my back doesn't bend the way it used to. And I've caught myself rambling on about these things, thinking others might understand. But what I've learned over time is that constant complaining doesn't help anyone. Not me, not my family, and certainly not my friends. I remember one particular conversation with an old friend. We were sitting together, and I couldn't help but mention how much pain I was in from a recent fall. I went on and on, detailing every ache, every sharp feeling in my joints. After a while, I noticed that my friend's face had changed. Instead of the usual warmth and interest, there was a slight distance. It wasn't that she didn't care, it was just that my complaints were starting to dominate the conversation. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't sure how to respond. I felt embarrassed, but it was also a wake-up call. The truth is, as much as we need to express our discomforts, we also need to balance it with gratitude and positivity. People don't want to hear a constant stream of negativity, especially if they don't fully understand the depth of our pain. It's natural to talk about the challenges we face, but we also need to share the victories, however small they may be. When we focus too much on what's wrong, we forget to highlight what's still going right. A little humor, a funny story, or even just a smile can turn a conversation from draining to uplifting. It's about finding that balance, sharing your struggles without letting them define you. As the years go by, something changes. Our bodies slow down, our energy dips, and we find ourselves relying more on others for help. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought I could keep going just like I always had. But as I got older, I realized something unsettling. People were starting to do more for me than I was doing for them. My children, my friends, even my neighbors would step in to help with things I used to take care of myself. Whether it was shopping for groceries or helping me with simple repairs around the house, it felt like my independence was slowly slipping away. I remember one day when my son insisted on mowing the lawn for me. I didn't want to let him do it. After all, I'd always taken pride in keeping my yard neat. But he was insistent, and reluctantly, I handed him the lawnmower. Later, as I watched him from the window, I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. I wasn't as capable as I once was. The thought of him having to do everything for me made me uncomfortable, almost like I was becoming a burden. The more I thought about it, the more I noticed that people were offering to help with things I didn't even think I needed help with, and it left me feeling less like myself. It's a tough pill to swallow when you've spent a lifetime taking care of yourself and others, and suddenly, you're the one being taken care of. But here's the thing. It's okay to accept help, even if it feels uncomfortable. The key is not to let it define you. We have to stay active and independent for as long as possible, whether it's doing small tasks or just staying mentally sharp. And we must also remember that when we ask for help, we don't diminish our value. We just allow others to show us love in a way that we might not have expected. As we age, something shifts in the way people around us perceive our health struggles. I've experienced it firsthand. When I was younger, no one ever had to remind me to take care of myself. I was active, strong, and didn't think twice about pushing through physical discomfort. But as I've grown older, my body has begun to betray me in ways I never expected. I have more doctor's appointments, more medications to keep track of, and sometimes I find myself struggling with things I never imagined would be an issue. It's a humbling experience, to say the least. I remember a time when I started feeling the effects of a health condition that I didn't want to admit was getting worse. I'd complain to my children or friends about how much pain I was in, but they didn't seem to understand. My daughter, who was always so strong and active, would say things like, "Dad, you're fine. You just need to get up and move around more." But the truth was, I was more than just a little sore. I was experiencing chronic pain that affected my daily life. I could see the frustration in her eyes as she tried to encourage me, and it made me feel like I was being too much of a burden. The more I tried to explain, the more I realized she couldn't truly understand what I was going through. She hadn't lived through what I had, and it was hard for her to grasp the limitations that aging had placed on me. It's difficult when the people closest to you don't fully understand the depth of your health struggles. Sometimes they can't relate to the fatigue, the joint pain, or the mental exhaustion that comes with aging. But what I've learned is this: It's not about them being insensitive, it's about the gap between their experience and mine. It's up to us to help them understand. When we communicate openly and honestly about our health and ask for patience and understanding, we bridge that gap and make it easier for everyone to navigate the challenges that come with getting older. As the years roll on, I've noticed something about myself, and I'm sure many of you can relate. I tend to dwell on the past a bit too much. There are days when I find myself lost in memories of the good old days, when the world seemed simpler, when I had more energy, when life felt more vibrant. I often find myself reminiscing about times with my family, old friends, or even about the places I used to go. There's comfort in these memories, a sense of nostalgia that feels good, especially when life now seems slower, quieter. But what I've come to realize is that while these memories are precious, they can also create a divide between me and the younger generation. I remember sitting down with my granddaughter one afternoon, and we were chatting about her school days and her latest adventures. As she talked about new technologies and the changes in the world, I caught myself slipping into a long-winded story about a trip I took when I was her age. I didn't even notice how much I was talking about the past until I saw her eyes glaze over. She wasn't being rude, but I could see that my stories, though meaningful to me, didn't connect with her. She was living in the present, not in the days gone by. And that's when it hit me. Talking about the past all the time isn't just about nostalgia, it's also about keeping others at arm's length. The more I talk about my past, the less I engage with their present. The truth is, I've realized that people, especially younger ones, want to be seen for who they are now, not just who we remember them to be. If I keep talking about the good old days, I'm not allowing them to share their own experiences. So, I've tried to shift the balance. Now, I make a point to listen more, to show interest in their lives, and share my memories sparingly. Life isn't just about reliving the past. It's about embracing the present and creating new memories together. As I've grown older, I've noticed something curious happening. People don't always seem to be as patient with me as they once were. In my younger years, I was quick, sharp, and decisive. I could make decisions on the fly, speak my mind without hesitation, and keep up with conversations at a fast pace. But now, as time has passed, I find that I need more time to think things through, to process information, and to gather my thoughts. Sometimes, I need a little more time to respond or to understand new ideas, and that's not always easy for others to accept. There was an incident a few months ago that really made me reflect on this. I was having a conversation with an old friend, and I was trying to explain something I had learned recently. It wasn't a difficult topic, but as I started talking, I could see my friend's expression shift. He was impatient, tapping his foot, looking at his watch, and sighing as if waiting for me to finish. I could feel the tension in the air. My words were taking longer to come out, and I wasn't sure if I was explaining myself clearly. I felt the frustration in his silence, and it stung. It wasn't that he didn't care, but I realized that I was slowing things down. My need for extra time to think and speak was interrupting the flow of the conversation, and it was uncomfortable for both of us. It dawned on me that as we age, people's expectations of our mental and emotional agility shift. They want us to keep up, to be as sharp as we once were, and when we can't, it can create tension. But here's what I've learned. It's okay to take our time. We may not be as quick as we once were, but we still have valuable insights to share. It's important to communicate our need for a little extra patience and space. People who care about us will understand, and those who don't, well, they'll eventually learn. Our worth doesn't diminish with age. We just move at a different pace now, and that's perfectly fine. As we age, something changes in the way we interact with others, especially when it comes to expressing our emotions and our needs. In my younger days, I had no problem speaking my mind, whether it was about how I felt or what I wanted. I was direct, clear, and unafraid to share my thoughts. But as time went on, I found myself becoming quieter, less vocal about what I needed or how I was feeling. There's a certain vulnerability that comes with aging, and I think that's one of the reasons why we sometimes hold back. We don't want to be a burden to our loved ones, so we try to keep our emotions to ourselves. I remember a time not too long ago when I was feeling a little lonely. I hadn't seen my children in a while, and I missed their company. Instead of reaching out and telling them how I was feeling, I stayed quiet. I thought maybe they were busy and didn't want to bother them, but I could see that the longer I held my feelings in, the more distant I became. When I finally did reach out, I realized that I hadn't been expressing my needs clearly, and that's why they hadn't been met. They weren't avoiding me. they simply didn't know what I needed. What I've learned is that we have to express our emotions, even if it feels uncomfortable. It's not about demanding attention or sympathy. It's about being honest with those around us. When we don't communicate our needs, others may assume that we're fine, that we don't require anything, when in fact, we might be feeling isolated, sad, or even frustrated. By speaking up, we allow those who care about us to offer support in a way that they might not have realized we needed. It's not always easy, but it's necessary. Aging doesn't mean we should retreat into silence. It means we should become more comfortable with asking for what we need and trusting others to respond with love. One of the more difficult aspects of aging is the sense of being overlooked or underestimated. When I was younger, I had a strong presence. People listened to me, valued my opinions, and relied on my experiences. But as the years went by, I noticed that people started treating me differently. I wasn't as frequently asked for advice, and my opinions seemed to carry less weight. It wasn't just that I was getting older, it was that others were beginning to see me as less relevant. That realization stung more than I care to admit, and it wasn't easy to accept. I recall a conversation with my nephew a while ago. He's a bright young man, full of ambition, and he often turns to me for advice, but on this particular day when I started offering my thoughts on a situation he was facing, he interrupted me. I know, Uncle, but things are different now. The world is changing fast." At that moment, I felt a shift in our dynamic. I was no longer the wise elder offering guidance. At least, that's how it felt. He didn't outright dismiss my advice, but I could sense that he didn't value it as much as before. It made me question whether my voice still mattered in a world that was constantly evolving. However, what I've come to realize is that aging doesn't mean losing value. It's not about being outdated. It's about adjusting the way we communicate our wisdom. The world may have changed, but our life experiences still have great worth. The trick is to adapt, to meet others where they are, and to offer our insights in ways that resonate with the present. Our stories, our lessons, still carry meaning, but we must present them in a way that connects with the needs and realities of the people we're speaking to. Being older doesn't mean we're irrelevant. It means we have a different perspective, and that perspective is still valuable. We just need to find the right moment, the right language, and the right audience to share it with. Our voice still counts, even if it's sometimes harder to hear. As I sit here, reflecting on the years that have passed, I've come to realize that aging isn't just about slowing down. It's about understanding and adapting to the new dynamics of life. It's a process that none of us can avoid, but it's also an opportunity to grow in different ways. The truth is, while aging presents challenges, it also offers us a chance to share our wisdom, connect with others, and continue to live fulfilling lives. The key is learning how to navigate the changes with grace and openness. I've shared with you today some of the reasons why people may seem distant or even begin to treat us differently as we age. But the good news is that we don't have to face these changes alone. It's important to communicate our feelings, embrace new ideas, and, most importantly, stay connected with those who care about us. Life may not be the same as it once was, but that doesn't mean it can't still be rich with love, connection, and purpose. We just have to be willing to adjust and embrace each phase of life with a positive outlook. I hope that these insights have resonated with you. If you're someone who wants to continue learning, growing, and staying informed about how to live your best life in your later years, I encourage you to subscribe to Elderly Hacks. This channel is designed to help you navigate the challenges of aging, offering tips, advice, and inspiration to make each day easier and more enjoyable. By subscribing and watching regularly, you'll be part of a community that values wisdom, connection, and ongoing growth. Let's continue to support each other and share the journey of aging together. Don't miss out, join us, and let's make these years the best ones yet.